Theater presents husband and wife duo Drew and Ellie Holcomb, known for their soulful Americana sound, having toured with legends like Willie Nelson, Don Henley, and the Avett Brothers. Tuesday, February 13th at 7:30 p.m. Tickets and information at floridatheater.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler. On today's First Coast Connect, Mayor Deegan bears down on budget season. We ask her about expected shortfalls, garbage fees, and take your calls and questions on our monthly Ask the Mayor segment. Then, giving voice to victims of the Holocaust. We talk to the founder of Violins of Hope ahead of their Jacksonville Symphony showcase. And would you choose pain over boredom? Are you still you when you dream? All questions tackled by a new exhibit at MOSH. Join the conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. Email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or reach out on social. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Jordan's King Abdullah will be at the White House this morning to meet President Trump. This comes after Trump called for the U.S. to take over Gaza and for Jordan and Egypt to take in displaced Palestinians. NPR's Jane Araf reports from Amman.
The day before the White House meeting, Trump threatened Jordan with aid cuts if it didn't agree to the plan. Jordan, a key U.S. security partner, needs the aid provided by Washington. But according to former Foreign Minister Marwan Mouasher, accepting Trump's plan would mean the country would cease to exist in many ways.
This is an existential issue to Jordan that does not lend itself to any economic pressure from the United States.
He points out that expelling Palestinians to Jordan would breach the peace treaty it signed with Israel 3 decades ago, and that this is a rare case where Arab countries, including powerful Saudi Arabia, are united in opposing it. Jane Araf, NPR News, Amman, Jordan.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says his country will respond firmly to steel and aluminum tariffs President Trump imposed yesterday. Dan Karpinchuk reports Trudeau says the 25% tariffs are unjustified and unacceptable.
Trudeau stopped short of committing to a dollar-for-dollar retaliation as he has for the now paused import tariffs, but he says his government will stand up for Canadian workers and Canadian industries. Trudeau also says his government will be working with the Trump administration ahead of the tariffs coming into effect to point out how deeply integrated the U.S. and Canadian steel and aluminum markets are. They include defense, shipbuilding, and auto manufacturing. When Trump introduced similar tariffs in 2018, Canada retaliated during free trade negotiations before it received an exemption. Trudeau is in Paris working to strengthen Canada-EU trade ties as both face tariff threats from Washington. For NPR News, I'm Dan Karpinchuk in Toronto.
All work has stopped at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The agency's job is to make sure Americans are getting fair and transparent treatment from financial products and services, such as banks. Massachusetts Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren helped create the Bureau. She went to a protest outside the agency headquarters in Washington yesterday. She says President Trump and his allies have told staffers not to do any work.
Now think about this. I want you to think about this for a minute. No matter how big the scam, no matter how bold the trap, they have said, just stand by and let the Wall Street boys take your money.
The Republican staff on the Senate Banking Committee wrote online that Trump's changes will help bring responsibility back to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. A big winter storm is coming to the central and eastern U.S. this morning. Winter storm advisories and warnings stretch from Texas to New Jersey. This is NPR.
You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. St. Augustine's popular holiday event Nights of Lights brought record crowds downtown this year, and the city says it needs more cash to keep things running well. During a post-mortem about the event last night, City Manager David Burcham laid out a number of suggestions to combat the traffic problems the event causes and to keep public safety top of mind.
The city government hasn't seen crowds this big, events this large, with the resources that we have, and we need help.
Now, assuming the city can get additional funding from St. Johns County for its plans, St. Augustine will test out new crowd control methods for the 4th of July holiday. The city plans to lease out a parking lot downtown to provide more portable restrooms, cooling stations, and more. The city also plans to introduce additional security measures like traffic barriers. For the first time ever, Jacksonville Zoo and Gardens is in the running for Best Zoo in the U.S. The contest is part of USA Today's 10 Best Readers' Choice Awards. The zoo's Nikki Smith says the nomination reflects a lot of hard work and dedication on the part of zoo staff, and she invites the public to help Jacksonville secure a spot among the nation's top zoos. To vote, go to 10best.usatoday.com. The deadline is March 10th. Highs this afternoon in Jacksonville will reach the upper 70s to lower 80s, and we do have a slight chance for some pop-up showers later on this afternoon.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Luminescence Foundation, dedicated to shedding light on neurological research focused on Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases and supporting land conservation initiatives, and the listeners who support this NPR station.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, celebrating cranes on the downtown skyline and bearing down on budget season. We welcome Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan and take your calls and questions in our monthly Ask the Mayor segment. Later, the performance of violins that survived the Holocaust, giving voice to millions who didn't. But first, here to talk city headlines and answer your questions, we are joined, as we are each month, by Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan. Good morning.
Good morning, Ann. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you as well, Mayor. If you would like to reach out to us, you can call 904-549-2937. You can email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Mayor, you've been making a lot of budget appearances, and I want to get to that. But first, you spent a good chunk of Monday talking about new initiatives downtown, building, construction cranes. What was the goal of this I Dig Jacks?
Well, really, it's not just about downtown. We're starting downtown. But we really want to highlight for people that Jacksonville is on the move, and that the things that we have been talking about, they're not just renderings. They're things that are actually going into the ground, cranes in the air, things going vertical. And I think that it's hard for people to really know what's going on unless you tell them what's going on. But then also, we want people to take pride in that. The whole I Dig Jacks initiative is just about taking pride in our city and the growth that we're seeing and the projects that we feel are really going to be important projects for our city and our citizens.
And some of the ones that you highlighted were parks, including, things that are happening along the riverfront and, what used to be the landing.
That is such a cool spot. Have you walked down there since they've been under construction on that? I mean, it is.
I haven't really been able to access it, I think, mostly.
Well, you can sort of see it from the tower right next to it. But also, I mean, we took a tour the other day, and we gave a tour yesterday, but it's really quite an enormous space. And the park that they are developing with the playground on the roof and all the greenery and I mean, it is going to be a spectacular space. I think it's going to be one of those spaces that people in other cities talk about.
It does look like the pictures of it are beautiful. The renderings doesn't have to be a nasty word, but right. I wonder, a lot of the spaces are spaces as opposed to things. And I wonder if you have any concern, now there's always almost a position that needs to be hired to activate spaces,
oh, you
right?
Bet. Absolutely.
And some of the renderings, I'll say, I looked at them, they're beautiful,
they're
but
gorgeous.
they feature more people than I saw Friday afternoon at noon last week walking around downtown. So where are these people going to come from to fill these spaces?
Oh my goodness. I think, I know I bring up Tampa all the time, but I bring it up because if you walked around Tampa 15 years ago, I mean, it was a ghost town. I mean, literally the riverfront was a ghost town. What they did is they went in and they heavily invested in riverfront parks and in riverfront spaces, and people came. And I think the same will be true for us. We have for so long, I mean, well, forever. This is our natural amenity, right? We have a river that runs through our city. We have an ocean. How have we really, really taken those amenities and used them to their full potential? We haven't. And we want our citizens to be able to enjoy that. But beyond that, obviously, Ann, that's one of the places we'd really like to drive growth. We are a growing community. We had 17,000 people added to our city last year. And what we'd like to see is have some of those people come to our urban areas and infill growth in the places where we'd really like to see it. And I think when you have those beautiful, attractive, linear connected parks, I think you're going to see a lot of people wanting to come down, and then a lot of development that will come, on the heels of that.
And there is obviously some development that is happening, and some very, promising development, including things like the Four Seasons, which seem like they will be generative in their own right.
Absolutely.
But there was also some news this week, or last week, I guess, late last week, about a very signature boutique that's closing downtown. We had Emily Moody, who's the owner.
I was so sad to see that. I love her, and I love that shop.
Well, we had her on just a couple weeks ago. I want to actually take a listen, if we can, to what she had to say. This was obviously before her announcement that she was going to be closing.
The reason that I've stayed so many years is because I do believe in downtown at the end of the day. Does it get exhausting? 100%. I'm not going to lie on the radio here and say that everything is rosy, peachy keen. But I hate to say it, but someone's got to. I mean, how many Jack's Chamber trips do you need to take to go visit other cities and see what can be done in our city? It's not rocket science. We can get a cool grant program together and bring some more people downtown. I know that we don't lack the creatives or the business owners. I mean, there's so many cool small businesses that are looking for brick and mortar, and why can't we fill them in these open vacant spaces that have literally been sitting for the 9 years that I've been downtown?
Yeah. So we know, I mean, Emily has kind of since decided she can't hang in there anymore.
Yes,
she's going to relocate.
I was very surprised to see that, and I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but I was very surprised to see it. I feel like there are so many things that we are putting in place downtown right now that are going to make the scenario for business owners like her so much better. But I understand that you have to do what you have to do as a business person. One of the things we have to continue to do is focus on the homelessness initiatives that still need to be fully funded down there. I know that was another thing that, what was a concern for her. So, but
she really wants to see something done to bring small businesses in, to enable small businesses.
I think, look, we have undertaken a large number of small business initiatives. In terms of our small and emerging business initiatives have been really off the charts since we came in. We've increased our small and emerging businesses by 22%. But specifically to downtown, I would certainly be open to any ideas that she or other downtown potential business people would have in terms of things we could do better. I certainly don't want to lose people like her, and I hope at some point she'll come back.
Is there an opportunity to just create sort of like a space like how Cork is for artists, and, that would just be, because you look at some of the properties that are even being discussed right now that the city might give to a developer right by the Main Street Bridge,
right.
Large, attractive parcels of land that are just probably going to be given directly to.
Well, they're swaps. They're land swaps. So they're value swaps. You analyze the value of that property and you swap it for another piece of property. So it's not just we're going to give this to you. But in terms of what we're doing with the University of Florida, there's some of that, just because we have a lot of land that could be used for this purpose, which will obviously be an economic boom for our city.
Armada Stadium also is like a dollar, right? They're being charged $1.
I get your point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is there an opportunity like that to do something to set aside for small businesses?
There are many opportunities I think that we could look at for downtown businesses. We want to make sure that our businesses downtown are successful, and That was the very first thing when I saw that news. The very first thing I did was I picked up the phone and I said, what do we have to do to keep this from happening again? We really need some solutions there. I don't want to lose any of the small businesses downtown.
Yeah. We've got a call from Chad on the South Bank. Good morning, Chad. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. Donna, first of all, glad to hear all the stuff about the river and the homeless and all that stuff, all those initiatives. It's really good stuff. But Donna, you remember me. I used to have Univision here in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And I'm still very concerned about the Hispanic community, especially in this climate. This climate, there's a lot of fear now in the Hispanic community.
I
There have been
understand.
ICE raids. I mean, let's talk about ICE going to the schools. Everybody's all scared. In the last couple of years, we've had the Hispanic community growing at over 6% per year in this local area, just in Jacksonville alone. And a lot of them from Venezuela.
Yep.
Mexicans, like always, but not so much of Venezuela, and Cubans are coming here, but everybody's scared. What is the city doing? Is this considered a sanctuary city or a safe harbor city?
There are no
What's happening
sanctuary.
with-
There are no
with-
sanctuary cities in Florida. But I will say this to you, and I've said this before. This is a city of immigrants. We are an incredibly diverse city, and we value our immigrant communities, and we don't want our immigrant communities to be afraid. We obviously will follow the law as long as that law is constitutional. But we will also make sure that those people who are here trying to do things the right way are treated with dignity and respect. That's what we anticipate, and that's what we will expect. And we are in the process right now of developing tools for people that we can share with people to know their rights in these situations. We will do everything that we can to make sure that our very thriving immigrant community knows how much they are loved and they're part of our community. So I understand the fear, and I certainly think people know where my heart is on this. I think that if you look at the vast majority of people in this country in polling, they have said they would love to see an immigration system that works, as opposed to necessarily an approach like the one that we are apparently taking. But the bottom line is the law needs to be followed, and we will follow the law as long as it's constitutional.
And what are you hearing about local enforcement? I know you put out a statement in response to some of these fears that were, bubbling up around the community. But what are you actually being told about local enforcement?
Honestly, Ann, I'm not hearing much. From what I was able to gather from listening to the sheriff, who will really have the lion's share of enforcement policy here. What I am hearing is they are going to focus very heavily on gang activity. Beyond that, I haven't heard a lot. It's been pretty quiet from my neck of the woods.
All right, we've got a call from Don in North Jacksonville. Good morning, Don. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Mayor Deegan, I believe you're doing a great job with the city.
Thank you.
So far. And but also I wanted to address a little bit about the criticisms that you get from council members and several people about the budget, about wasteful spending, similar to what's going on in D.C. with Elon Musk and Trump and the whole process that's going on. How is your communications office addressing those issues to be as transparent as possible to avoid those unfair criticisms that sometimes are false, sometimes are exaggerated? What is your communications office to state clearly and transparently that the things that are going on through the city budget?
Well, look, there are a couple of things we've done, and I appreciate the question, because transparency and letting people know exactly what we're doing is very, very important to me. We have created a series of transparency dashboards on the city website where people can go and see exactly what is going on, where we're spending money, why we're spending money, how those projects are progressing. But beyond that, we have also instituted a lean program where we've asked everybody to take a look at how they can be more efficient. And we've already saved thousands and thousands of hours in efficiency. And that will continue to be required and asked of people. And I think so far it's worked out very, very well. But the answer to your question is, I think what you know of me is that I'm not much of a hot take queen. I don't knee jerk to a lot of the things that are said, because a lot of them are said for political effect. And at the end of the day, I will continue to communicate not only through town halls, but through our dashboards, through the meetings in the community, and every way that I can to our community, not only to listen to what people believe about what we're doing, but also to explain, here's why we're doing what we're doing and here's how it's working out. So I think we've been very transparent about all that. And frankly, I think if you look at all the things that we've accomplished here in this first year and a half that I've been in office, I think we have invested in the right places that are going to create the greatest return for our citizens. And the goal of that is to create a better quality of life for everybody, but also to be able to keep taxes low. At the end of the day, if we make the right investments, then we can remain a low tax city with a high quality of life, and that's what we all want.
We are talking to Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan. It's our monthly Ask the Mayor segment. You can join our conversation by giving us a call or sending us an email. We've got an email from Anna. She says, Donna, I want you to know that I love what you're doing with Jacksonville's beautiful nature and parks, and I want you to know that it's noticed. I walk my dogs all over Murray Hill, Riverside, Avondale on a daily basis, and parks are one of the best part of Jacksonville. Go trees.
Well, Daryl Joseph does a wonderful job with our parks, but we have definitely invested there, and I appreciate that she's noticing.
We also have an email from Martina. She says, as far as the homeless initiative goes, I believe the city could be doing more. We have a lot of empty buildings downtown that can take in unhoused people and rehabilitate them and turn them into productive members of society. Do we have a clear path for helping them get back on their feet, or is the only plan to remove them from public view and stick them somewhere else out of sight?
We absolutely have a very comprehensive plan. Tracy Polson has been our point on our homelessness initiatives, but we have been working with our partners in that space, with Sulzbacher and others, and we have created a plan that would, frankly, take people from the point of asking them to leave the streets to get them the services they need, those 24/7 wraparound services, to get them into a place immediately where they could be housed, and then eventually, after receiving the services they need, get them back into a productive life. That's the goal. I agree with you. It is never a solution to simply move people from one place to the next. And when you don't invest in those wraparound services, that's exactly what you end up doing. So we are, because of the state law that has said you have to get people off the streets. We have a path team, we call it, our JFRD team, that goes out and expresses to people what their options are. You can go here, you can go here. We can connect you with this service. If they refuse, then JSO has to take over. So the goal is to get as many people out there on the streets that can convince people to trust us enough to get them into services that will actually better their lives and frankly, overall better the lives of all of us. But that takes money. And so we proposed $10 million for that effort and said we would go raise another 5 to 10 from the private sector. And so far, council has funded about $1 million of that. So that's not going to get us there, and we're hopeful that as we continue to work with council and get their input on our plans, that we'll continue to invest more and more in that homelessness initiative, because we really do need it.
What are you proposing for this next budget year on that front?
Well, we're not there yet. We're in the process, as you know, of budget town halls right now, but we're also I believe we have that blueprint in place and are continuing to work with council on how to implement that blueprint. So that would be a starting point for us. We think we need to start with about $10 million and then get some money from the private sector, which people seem, amenable to. So I think that's a great starting point, and we'll continue to go from there.
We've got a call from Jerry in St. John's. Good morning, Jerry. Go ahead.
Good morning. Yes. Hi, Mayor. Thanks for all that you do.
Thank you.
I had an idea for you. I've heard of other cities offering artists a live-work incentive to come and move to their city, sort of take over a block or two, bring it back to life, make it be lively, have businesses, and this could be for small business owners too, businesses, a small grocery store. In exchange for free rent, they would renovate the building for a certain amount of time. Many variables that you could do on this, but it seems like artists are always the ones that, and small business owners, willing to go into places that just need a little
love.
Yes.
Yes, I got you. Listen, we have invested a great deal more in the arts than have previous administrations, because we do believe we have an incredibly thriving and talented arts community that can really help to bring our city back. And plus, we're just proud of it. I mean, it's part of our heritage here. So we did have some artist grants that we dispersed this year, and we're continuing to work with the Cultural Council too. But I would certainly be open to an idea like that. Certainly something to explore. We're always trying to come up with creative ways to keep our artists in Jacksonville, because we really do have a very talented community. But also, if it's a way to help us to keep more people downtown, that's certainly something to look at. I know that over at the Phoenix district, they're doing some of that.
Yeah, I wonder, Tallahassee's got kind of this divided government that's happening right now, not in the traditional sense, but certainly now a rift a little bit that's developed between our governor and the legislature. And they're now looking back at budget cuts that he did last budget cycle that took effect in July, and looking at reinstating some of those line item vetoes, including, he vetoed all of the arts funding statewide. Is that something that you think that our local delegation could push on? Do you think that there's any traction to try to reinstate some of that funding, or anything else that got cut?
Yeah, listen, I don't know where we are on restoring cuts from last year, but I can tell you that our local delegation has been very helpful in terms of understanding what some of our needs are and trying to help us push those forward. So I don't know where they are on going back and getting funding that was vetoed.
All right. Got a call from Ira on the south side. Good morning, Ira. Go ahead. Ira, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Hi, Ira.
Thank you. Mayor, thank you very much for all you do. It's been a real pleasure watching you in force for the last year or so.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Maybe my math is all wrong, but why do you have to have more than 15 city council people? Where do these at-large people come from? Who pays for them? Why do we need them? Can't we just divvy up 15 places where these city council people work, and the rest of them can go away and save some money and do some more understanding of what the city really needs if they would just get back together and throw the 3 or 4 people who are out of network, just leave them alone.
Well,
I'll take my question off.
I appreciate the question. There have been discussions from time to time to try to change the charter.
19 city council members.
So we have 14 districts. We have 5 at-large council members who sort of float, that are sort of, responsible for things around the city. But there have been many people who have suggested that. That's not something I spend a lot of time, frankly, with all the things that are on my plate thinking about. But I know there are people that have suggested we don't need as many. I don't know. We're a big city. I could see arguments for and against that, but it would require a change in the charter, which would be a big lift.
I mean, the more you have, I guess, the better chance you have at some sort of direct representation, but it does dilute the power of any single city council member by a great deal.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to take a call from Don on the south side. Good morning, Don. Go ahead. Good morning, Don. Go ahead.
Is it me?
Yep.
And thanks for taking my call. Good morning, Mayor.
Morning.
I'm wondering how the grant trickery in Washington is affecting projects in Jacksonville, especially the Emerald Trail. I remember a lot of hoopla when that grant came through.
Yeah, by far the biggest grant we've ever received in our city's history. And all of our congressional delegation was in lockstep working for that grant. We don't have any reason to believe that grant is in any sort of danger. That when things were sort of recalibrated after that first big announcement, it looks now like if I am concerned about any grant, it's probably that $3 million grant that we received in January for the additional electric chargers. Obviously, we would love to have those. We're right on the interstate, and we have we would love to be a leader in that space, but. That looks like it's not a priority for this current administration. So that would be the one place where I would wonder if that funding is going to go away. But these are funds appropriated by Congress. So hopefully, at some point, after the administration has an opportunity to evaluate where they are on everything, hopefully things just funnel on through. But I'm not concerned about the Emerald Trail dollars. I believe we'll get those. Those are as we spend, we're reimbursed.
What about just federal employees generally that live in this area, whether they work for the VA or some other, that giant federal building in the center of downtown? Yeah. Are you hearing concerns from people just about not being employed anymore?
No, I haven't had anybody approach me personally. I have had a couple of people suggest that we should look to see if there are any of those people that we might be able to, to bring into the city. But I don't know, and I haven't heard from any of them so far. I think everybody's sort of waiting for the dust to settle on where everything will actually end up. And I think that's really, at least from my perspective, I don't spend a lot of time with it, and I'm going to be honest, I've got enough to do with being the mayor of Jacksonville.
There's a lot of dust.
There's a lot of dust. But at the end of the day, I don't know where that will end up.
Got an email from Michael. He says, "Good morning. There was a playground adjacent to the Dinsmore boat ramp on Dunn Avenue that was there for years. A few years ago, it was demolished. Now there is just an empty field. I called the city 2 years ago and asked about it being restored. They said funds have been allocated but could not tell me when it would be built. I have a small child and would love to have him enjoy it. Do you know why no one could tell me when to expect it to be restored?"
You know what? I don't know why, but I can tell you that I've got staff members listening to this, and I will take that note and I will go back and find out what the status of that is and why that would be.
All right. Got an email from James. He says, "Heard the news yesterday about the land swap giving a developer the parcel on the northeast corner of Riverfront Plaza. Generally, when the city is disposing of property, the Downtown Investment Authority issues a request for proposals, and developers respond with proposals. This allows the city to make sure it's getting the best project and price for the property. Why was that not done in this case?"
Well, this was a land swap again for a building that the University of Florida would like to set up its campus in to start. And so there was an evaluation done of what parcels would be of equivalent value. This was a parcel that was of interest to this developer, but once it goes through the DIA board, and it has not, done that yet, then there's a 30-day period where they are required to open it up to other bids or anybody else that's interested in that. And if there's one that comes in that's better, then we'll look for another parcel of land to swap with this developer. But at the end of the day, I will say in terms of Brian Mall and the team that he has so far made this swap, if it is approved. This is a group that we know has been successful in building both DC and Tampa, and so we know they can get the work done. I think one of the problems that we've had over the years is we've basically said, all comers, and let's treat everybody exactly the same way, and we end up spending a whole lot of time, frankly, sometimes on folks that just can't get their arms around the project. And we know that these folks can. Whether that ends up being ultimately what happens will determine what happens in that 30-day period after DIA votes on it. Should they approve it, then there's a 30-day period for other bids to come in.
We're taking your calls and questions for Mayor Donna Deegan. We've got a call from Robert on the north side. Good morning, Robert. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mayor, and good morning, Ms. Gross. This is Robert Johnson. I have two questions. First question is, what are some of the economic initiatives and homeownership initiatives that are being underway or being put in place on the north side of Jacksonville and the east side of Jacksonville? And also, how do we get, or actually, what's the reason for the bus removals, the bus, what do you call it, the bus station removals, the bus stop removals on the north side of Jacksonville? There's a lot of them that have been removed.
Okay, on number two, I don't know, and I'll find out. That would be probably a JTA question, but I can make that phone call and find out what's happened there. In terms of opportunities for home ownership, the city has undertaken a down payment assistance program that there will still be more people that are added to that. I know that there are a number of different initiatives in terms of rental properties that certain amounts of rent would be then matched to allow for down payment on a home. We're looking at a number of different initiatives that way, but we're going to continue to try to make home ownership, reachable for people. Obviously, in this, especially in this climate where where affordability is an issue. But those programs are certainly available to people on the north side.
We got an email from Jay. Says, when my councilperson was not responsive to my repeated calls, I reached out to 2 at-large members whose offices called back right away, and they got my councilperson to call me within 2 days. I just wanted to offer a defense of our at-large members. We also have an email from, no, I think actually that's a call that I missed, but it was a question asking whether it's true that the city's legally required to have a balanced budget.
We have to have a balanced budget, and we do have a balanced budget. That doesn't mean you can't use money from reserves.
Talk about that a little bit, because that has been a point of contention between you and some on the council.
Yeah, so we are required to have a certain amount of money in reserves. Frankly, we have about double the amount that we are required to have in reserves. So when we have issues that go beyond what we can pay for out of the general fund, it is perfectly fine to dip into those reserves on occasion, as long as you don't go too far and you have and you keep the amount of money in reserves that you have targeted. In our case, we've never come close to even our target number in terms of depleting our reserves. So I think that's what you're hearing, that it's just there's a and again, I'm going to say it again, that some of those conversations are political. And some just frankly just stem from a different belief in how city funds should be used. But at the end of the day, yes, we present a balanced budget, and we have to, and we do.
Just briefly, a comment from Tom saying trash collection's an essential service. It should be paid for by the city. It was a mistake when the garbage fee was introduced. Just briefly, obviously that's an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, it is. And listen, I am going to give the city council all sorts of credit for taking up this issue, because frankly, it has been an issue that has been, the can has been kicked for so many years on this, to where we now have almost $100 million hole. And it's a problem with the beaches, because they pay about triple what we pay. Our homeowners in the city of Jacksonville pay about $12, and that's not changed for 15 years. So we have an ordinance that says we have to pay 85%. We have to charge at least 85% of what a fee costs the city, and that hasn't happened in years. So I think it's good to see the council actually at least taking action to look at this.
All right, Mayor Donna Deegan, thanks so much for being here. It's a pleasure as always.
Sorry.
All right. Up next, giving voice to victims of the Holocaust. First Coast Connect producer Stacey Bennett sat down with organizers of a special concert coming to town on Saturday. Let's take a listen.
They are described as a voice from another world, stringed instruments that survived the Holocaust, now restored and played for audiences across the globe. On February 15th, they will be played by members of the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra. Joining me now via video from Istanbul is Violins of Hope co-founder Avshalom Weinstein. Avshalom, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation.
I am also joined here in studio by Stephen Libman, President and CEO of the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks for being here. Violins of Hope is a project that's been around since the mid-90s, started by your father, Amnon Weinstein, who was a professional luthier. He died last March. My condolences. Can you tell us about the project Violins of Hope?
So it started with a lecture in Germany about instruments that my grandfather bought in Israel, in Palestine, just after the war, from people who didn't want to play their German-made instruments. And afterwards, my father spoke on a radio show, and we started getting more and more instruments who were played by Jewish people and also some by non-Jewish people during the war. Some of the instruments were played in ghettos, in camps. Some of the owners survived. Some unfortunately died. Today we have about 100 instruments in the collection. We are still getting more instruments, and we are touring quite a lot, doing many concerts, lectures, and a lot of educational programs.
What is the symbolism behind that?
So, for many years, we had survivors who could come and talk and tell their stories and what happened to them and their families. Unfortunately, most of the survivors are either gone or they cannot really talk anymore. And we have to make sure that all these stories don't go away, that people will keep on hearing them, listening, hopefully also learning. And one of the ways to do it is with the instruments. Those instruments were there, the owners were there, we have their stories and legacy. And music has lots of power in many, many ways, for many, many things. And we are trying to use this power also for education.
Very cool. Stephen, I'm going to turn to you. Why did you feel like it was important to bring this project to Jacksonville?
For many reasons. First of all, to a lot of what Avshi mentioned, but it also, these violins collectively have a very powerful story of resilience and also hope. And the moniker for this is building bridges through the power of music, since we are a symphony. And again, as Avshi said, music can be a very powerful educator. And though many of the original owners of these instruments are no longer alive, their spirit and their souls and hope lives through them. And from them, we can learn about what's happening around the world with anti-Semitism. Sadly, there is a rise in anti-Semitism, in racism, Islamophobia. And through this project, we hope to tell people that there is great hope and that together as a community, we can learn from the past.
Wow. Does this have special or personal significance for you?
I am Jewish, and most of my father's parents came from Russia in the 1920s. My mother's grandparents came from Lithuania. My brother has done research in Poland. We probably did lose family members in the Holocaust, but I'm not directly aware of that. But of course, as someone who is Jewish, and there's only 13 million of us left in the world, so it has great importance.
Avshi, I was on your website, and every instrument has a story, and you've attached some of the stories to the instruments. Do any stand out to you specifically, or are there specific stories that you carry with you?
So honestly, I tell you, no. I think that all the stories are very important, and I don't think that I should say whose story is more important than the others. I think they're all very important. They all tell us a lesson, and they represent many different people, many different aspects, many different things that happened during the war. There were so many tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, people involved during the war, during these years, and the amount of stories is simply endless, and they are all very, very important.
The first violin was brought to your father in the 80s?
In 1979.
Wow. What can you tell us about that?
So this violin belonged to a guy who played in Auschwitz on the way to the gas chambers. He survived the war, and he immigrated to South Africa, and he did not have any family, and he gave it to a guy who worked for him as a gift. And he brought the violin to my father, and when my father opened it, he saw lots of ashes inside. Now, if you heard testimonies, especially from Auschwitz, they always said that there was lots of ashes in the air from the crematorium, which was working 24/7. And ashes would go into the violin, like any other dust goes into a violin. Also, the ashes found their way into the violin, and when my father opened that violin, there was lots of ashes inside. He took it out, he restored the violin, gave it back to the new owner, and his son is playing it until today, as far as I know. But that was the very first violin that my father repaired that had a direct connection basically to the wall. It took him almost 20 years to go back and repair this kind of instruments when we started getting instruments in 1999.
What is that process like of restoration? What are some of the challenges you face with these not only older instruments, but that have been through the Holocaust?
So we are repairing all the instruments. The work is very much the same, although most of the instruments which were played in the camps and ghettos, they are very, very simple because the Nazis confiscated all the really good stuff. Unlike some of the other instruments that we will have for repair, those instruments, some of them were played outside in rain and snow, so the varnish work is a little bit different than regular violin restoration that people will play at home or in a hall. Other than that, it's very, very similar. The inside work, the crack repairs, the replacement of some of the parts, like fingerboards and pegs and the bridge and sound post and other things. It's basically the same like in every other violin.
Steve, we said at the beginning of the segment that the performance is February 15th, but you have free events people can come to before. What are they and how can folks register?
Sure. Thank you. Great question. We wanted to do more than just put on a performance where our musicians will actually play some of these instruments. And I should add that I believe 70 of the instruments will be on display in the lobby of the center outside of Jacoby Symphony Hall. So that's very important. And the stories that Avshi mentioned will be next to each of the instruments. We are having a series of educational opportunities on February 10th at 7 p.m. at the University of North Florida. And that program is sponsored by the Together Strong Community Fund. On February 11th at 7 p.m. at the Jacksonville Public Library, and then on February 12th at 5 p.m. at the Temple Congregational Havat Chesed Temple. And all of those are open to the public. You just have to go to our website to register, which is jaxsymphony.org, jaxsymphony.org to register. Avshi will be one of the speakers at each of these events. Stacey Goldring, who's the founder of Search for Identity, will be involved.
I love her.
She's fantastic. Cecilia Crystal, a Holocaust survivor and volunteer. Patrick Nolan, who's a professor of history at the University of North Florida and an expert on the Holocaust. And then Dr. Marianne Rice, who is our VP for Music Education and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiatives, who will be moderating the program. We think that we wanted to bring this program here, again, as I mentioned earlier, because there's a sad rise in anti-Semitism. And our primary sponsor, Brenda and Jean Walchuk, who are Jewish, said this needs to be for more than just the Jews in the community, because frankly, we're not going to learn anything more than we already know and that we've been taught. And so we reached out to the entire community. We have an advisory council that is comprised of community leaders. We have, as I mentioned, Elizabeth Anderson from One Jack, Cecilia Crystal from the Jewish Family and Community Services, Dr. Darby, who was on the Symphony Board, Miriam Feist, Jewish Federation, Rabbi Glasser from the congregation from the temple, Stacey Goldring, Elise Gustafson, who is an Episcopal priest, Dr. Courtney Kokolowski from Jacksonville University, Ann Lafrano, who's a board member, Patricia McElroy, who runs the ViStar Foundation, and herself, she has a PhD in divinity from Yale, Isaiah Oliver, who is the president of the Community Foundation, Leor Spring, and Brenda Walchuk. So we reached out to the entire leaders in the community, leaders in the faith community, and they will be giving, some of these people, their names I just read, will be giving readings. Yeah, so there will be music during the concert and readings. So it's an opportunity for people to come, listen, ask questions, and again, it's February 10th, 11th, and 12th, and then the concert's on the 15th.
I'm going to leave everyone with one last question. What do you hope people take away from this performance?
I think an understanding of what happened in the past, a desire to never see that repeated, to listen to the readings carefully, And because if you are ever put in the situation where you're experiencing and observing things, the question will be asked, what will you do? Are you just going to sit as a bystander, or are you going to take action? And so we hope that people in the community will take action if they see things, speak out when you see anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and racism. And we really believe, as Avshi said, that music brings us together, and that the Jacksonville Symphony plays a very important role in this community in bringing people together.
Well, Avshalom Weinstein and Stephen Libman, thank you so very much. We'll be right back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens in Jacksonville curated art from ancient times to the present. Explore galleries, enjoy refreshments and entrees at the cafe, and treasures in the museum shop. More at cummermuseum.org. World Affairs Council and UNF, partnering to engage citizens in becoming better informed participants in the global community. On February 11th, Ethan Mollick discusses embracing the AI revolution. More information at worldaffairscounciljax.org.
On the next Fresh Air, Sebastian Stan is nominated for an Oscar for his performance as Donald Trump in the film The Apprentice, and he won a Golden Globe last month for his role in A Different Man. We'll talk about his early childhood in communist Romania and his path to the U.S. and acting. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
The richest person in the world is taking control of the federal government's payment systems, shutting down agencies, and reshaping Washington.
I think the function of government under Trump, under Elon Musk, will not be to serve ordinary people, but to make the very richest people in this country even richer.
The president and the plutocrat. That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11 on WJCT News 89.9.
It's been nonstop from the new administration, but since taking office, Trump's White House now faces dozens of legal challenges. Vice President Vance says judges shouldn't control the executive's legitimate power. But when a president pushes the limits of his authority, what role should the courts play? That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Would you choose pain over boredom? And are you still you when you dream? Those are just some of the questions that you'll be prodded to explore in a new exhibit at the Museum of Science and History. Here to tell us about it is Dr. Anthony Mortimer, museum's Vice President of Education and Exhibits. Welcome back.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
This sounds so neat, this exhibit. Explain to us, first of all, what sets it apart from some of the other exhibits we may have seen, either at MOSH or other museums around the country?
Absolutely. This is probably one of the most exciting and unique exhibits we've ever had at MOSH. This is our rented traveling exhibit, which we tend to switch out about every 4 months. So the topic in itself is unique for an exhibit of this large scale. To find a psychology-focused exhibit that is relevant current research and to present it in an exhibit in a way that is multi-generational in appeal. My 4-year-olds that are visiting the museum today for their field trip will enjoy pushing the buttons and interacting with everything. They might not understand the content, but my older guests, my elementary school students, adults, I spend a couple hours each day in this exhibit just exploring it.
And it's something that presents kind of new challenges on different days.
Exactly. I could go through this 30 days in a row and have a slightly different experience each time, which is a huge draw for when I'm looking at what exhibits to book.
So you talk about it being a psychology-focused exhibit. It was created by the Ontario Brain Institute, but help us understand a little bit about how it explores psychology.
Sure. So in going through it, I've broken it down into really about 10 different psychological areas or concept topics that have multiple components of the exhibit under each. But really, to boil it down a little further for time, these interactive components will lead you through some reflection and activities based on how do I make decisions? How does critical thinking work? What role does emotion and memory play together? Why do I dream about the things I do? And why do many people have similar topics in their dreams? I personally can never remember mine, so that's a little frustrating. I don't know if I'm dreaming about those things or not. The most popular section of the exhibit so far has been a collection of 4 different rooms, each of which has an interactive that is designed to prompt a certain emotional response. There's a fear room, an awe room, a disgust room, and a surprise room.
Wow.
And the reflection question is, does everyone express facially emotion in the same way? Are there universal expressions of certain emotions? And the answer, as they quickly find out after participating in the interactive and then viewing the snapshot on the screen outside, that no, everyone doesn't look the exact same when they're afraid or when they're surprised.
Oh.
So the whole exhibit is like that. I like that it's a great mix of both technological interactives, physical interactives. You know, there's a shapeshifter, little mazes that you've got to distort your body to get through. You're not going to run out of things to do in this exhibit.
And I understand there's also kind of a life-size Pac-Man machine that sounds like a lot of fun to play. But I think it's also an exhibit of the moment. I mean, one of the things that people are prompted to explore is whether they've ever been fooled by fake news.
Exactly. And that is an interesting placement in the arrangement of the exhibit, too. It's right next to 2 different components that talk about the role that memory plays with emotion and how it ties in with imagination. So in the quick poll about fake news, the discussion there is, if I see something, even if I know for a fact from my own personal experience that it's not true, I may be inclined to consider it, and I may actually talk myself into believing it. And there are different psychological roles. There's areas within our brain and functions within our brain that can cause us to believe something that we actually know is not true.
It's fascinating. And there's also, I think, a prompt that tries to get people to answer whether they're carrying emotional baggage.
Yes, the kinetic sculpture is so much fun. And this is another one where, you know, the multi-generational appeal comes in. First of all, it's just beautiful. It's kind of a best I can describe it is, if you're a fan of the movie Inside Out, that beautifully explains how emotions work. This kinetic sculpture is a physical, interactive representation of that. So basically, it has a central figure, our little stick figure in the center, and he is weighed down by literal emotional baggage. It's suitcases that have labels on it that say guilt, betrayal, helplessness, things like that. And the guest can operate the foot pedals to kick his emotional baggage away from him, and each time you do that, he straightens up just a little bit. And on opposite sides, this is a part of the exhibit that takes teamwork. There are cranks where I can control whether his logical thinking and his critical thinking are both going in positive and constructive directions. If they are, he straightens up even more, and it activates the upper part of the sculpture, which addresses concepts like understanding, truth, and love. And when you get everything working in sync, the bell rings and he's achieved happiness. It's so much fun.
It sounds like a great exhibit. It is there until March?
May the 4th.
Oh, May 4th. Okay,
yes.
Very good. It is nice to talk to you again. Dr. Anthony Mortimer from MOSH, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
And that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you have feedback or suggestions, you can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. You can catch our rebroadcast if you missed anything. You can also find our entire archive on your favorite podcast platform. Join us tomorrow when we talk about the latest medical headlines, whether it's the impact of microplastics in our brain or Elon Musk in our government. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Life South Community Blood Centers, providing blood and patient services to the local hospitals, serving patients in this community. Donating blood with Life South helps save lives. More at lifesouth.org to find a blood drive near you.